The message arrived at 2:17 in the morning, just as I was standing alone beneath the dim lights of the nearly empty hotel lobby in Chile, and when I opened it, I felt the world become strangely quiet. Your assignment is terminated effective immediately. Your company accounts are disabled and you are responsible for getting yourself home. I read it 3 times without moving because my employer had just abandoned me thousands of miles from home with $37 in my wallet, no access to the company travel account, and a return flight that might no longer exist. While somewhere back in Ohio, my 8-year-old son Noah was sleeping beside the blue blanket he had owned since kindergarten and probably believed his mother would be home soon. My name is Elelliana Brooks, and for 5 years I worked for Mediterranean Italia, a luxury furniture company where executives talk endlessly about craftsmanship while treating the people behind their contracts like replaceable machinery. And my job was to negotiate with international suppliers, solve impossible problems, and somehow keep multi-million-dollar projects alive whenever senior managers had already made a mess of them. 3 weeks earlier, my director, Conrad Vale, had sent me to Chile after a sustainable timber cooperative threatened to end this relationship with Meriden, and before I left, Noah had wrapped his arms around me at the airport and whispered, "Mom, please don't miss my school recital," so I promised I would return in time, even though I already suspected that Conrad had no intention of making the assignment easy. The cooperative was located high in the hills outside the city, where mist rolled between trees and the old workshop smelled of fresh-cut walnut, and its director, Matteo Alvarez, refused to negotiate with me at first because Mediterranean had repeatedly delayed payments, demanded impossible delivery schedules, and treated his workers as if their livelihood were an inconvenience. Instead of defending my company, I listened to every complaint, reviewed every unpaid invoice, visited the workshop floor, spoke with the workers, and finally told Matteo I can't erase what my company has done, but I can promise that I won't lie to you about it. And that honestly slowly transformed an angry negotiation into something neither of us had expected, a genuine partnership built around fair prices, reliable payment, sustainable harvesting, and respect. While I worked from sunrise until late at night, Conrad kept sending messages demanding that I hurry, and during one video call he insulted Matteo so openly that the room went silent after the connection ended. But Matteo simply looked at me and said, "That man doesn't understand the difference between owning a company and earning someone's trust." By the 3rd week, I had negotiated an 18 million supply agreement that would secure Mediterranean's next 5 collections, and final signing was scheduled for the following morning. But instead of celebrating, I spent that evening recording a birthday message for Noah because his recital had already passed without me. And when he asked me over the phone, "Mom, are you coming home now?" I swallowed my tears and answered, "Soon, sweetheart, I promise." Then before sunrise, Conrad's message arrived, and suddenly every sacrifice became meaningless in his eyes. Because he had fired me without warning, cancelled my company access, and apparently expected the woman who had rescued his biggest supplier crisis to simply disappear, I could have begged, threatened him, or called the company headquarters. But instead, I picked up the unsigned 18 million agreement, walked through the rain to Matteo's workshop, and told him exactly what had happened. And after a long silence, he asked one question that changed the direction of my entire life. "Eleanor, do you understand that we never agreed to work with Meriden because of Meriden? We agreed because we trusted you." Matteo then revealed something I had never known. Another international company, furniture, called Northstar Living, had been trying to secure his corporation timber for almost a year, but he had refused every offer because he believed his relationship with Meriden could still be repaired. And now that Meriden had disregarded the person who created that relationship, he no longer felt obliged to protect them. "If you walk away, Meriden loses everything," I whispered, but Matteo shook his head and answered, "No, they lost it when they decided you were worthless." And the next morning he called Northstar Operations Director Celeste Morgan, introduced her to me, and within hours I was sitting across from an executive who wasn't asking how much profit I could generate for her, but what kind of career would allow me to be successful without sacrificing my son. Celeste listened as I explained the years of missed family events, midnight emergencies, unfair treatment, and the constant fear that saying no to an employer would mean losing the only stability no one I had. And when I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You don't need another company that expects you to prove your worth every morning. You need a company that already understands it." She offered me a senior international sourcing position with better pay, flexible travel, full authority over supplier relationships, and a schedule designed around Noah's school life. While Matteo transferred the new supply partnership to Northstar after the legal team completed the necessary process, and for the first time in years, I realised I wasn't being rescued, I was being recognised. Conrad began calling me before I had left the building, first accusing me of sabotaging Meriden, then threatening legal action, then suddenly apologising and promising me a promotion if I would return. But I listened to none of it, because every message reminded me of the woman I had been when I first arrived in Chile, the woman who believed she had to tolerate disrespect because a child needed stability. Matteo personally drove me to the airport, paid for my flight home despite my protests, and before I walked through the security, shook my hand and said, "Never confuse being needed with being valued, Elena, because companies need people every day, but the right people know how to value them." When I reached Ohio, Noah spotted me before anyone else. I ran across the airport so fast that his backpack nearly fell from his shoulders. And the moment he crashed into my arms, I stopped thinking about Meriden, Conrad, the cancer card, or the 18 million contract, because all I could feel was my son's heartbeat against mine as he whispered, "You came back." Months later, I stood beside Noah at the opening of Northstar's new international sourcing division, while Matteo and the Cooperative worker celebrated the partnership that had started with one broken cooperative relationship. And I finally understood that losing my old job had not destroyed my future, it had exposed it. If someone makes you feel replaceable, remember that their inability to recognize your value does not determine what you are worth. And please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content.